Good evening, everyone. I hope you're enjoying your weekend so far. My name is Kushi Purohit, and I am a foundation first-year student at the National Institute of Design, and I'll be your host for the day. So before we begin, let me take this chance to introduce to you our guest, Ankon Mitra. Ankon is a trained architect and practices as a sculptor. He has built an international reputation as a pioneer of the folding technique through his diverse projects. He's a recipient of the All India Gold Medal for Sculpture from the Prafulla Dahanukar Foundation in 2018 and the Lexus Design Award for Craft Design in 2020. He is also a TEDx speaker and a warrior for making connections across disciplines with his brainchild, Oritecture, which comes from origami and architecture. Ankon shares a unique vision of a universe forming and dissolving from the acts of folding. He teaches the folding technique extensively across design schools, architecture, and engineering colleges, hoping to expose our generation of thinkers to the endless possibilities of folding. And that's Ankon Mitra for you guys. So first off, to start a session, I would like to ask you, can you briefly introduce us to Oritecture? Where it came from, what it is? Yeah.
So I thought that the technique, when I started getting deeply into it, is there in a lot of things which are beyond just origami practice. So the idea of folding permeates everything all around us, from numerous features in the human body, from eyelids to fingers to brains to the digestive system and how it absorbs nutrition, to the world around us, to rivers and the uh, coastlines of continents, to the Himalayas, to trees. It's happening everywhere. It's architecture in nature, and it involves folding, and not just for the heck of it, but it's there because it serves the fundamental requirement of Mother Nature to be frugal, to save energy where she can, and to do more with less. And therefore, when I saw that a lot of people fold, like they are origami practitioners,
Right.
but a lot of other people who look at it don't necessarily make the connection between the paper folding that they are doing and the folding that's all around us. So I thought that this term would kind of encompass the fact that nature is doing a lot of architecting
Okay.
around us using this technique of folding. So oru, in fact, is the word oru means one fold in Japanese, and ori means many folds. And the added word, which is the heavy word gami, actually comes from the root word kami, which means paper. So if you
Right.
remove the word kami from it, then ori is essentially folds or folding. And architecture, of course, like I said, is all around us. Nature also does a lot of architecting, not only human
Right.
beings. So I thought I'll put the two together, which kind of communicates the folding that happens in the natural world, as well as possibilities for human beings to also look at it in ways where they would fundamentally use folding um, to think of design solutions spatially, but
Right.
also materially and in other ways. And fun fact is that the room in which you are sitting at the moment, the room in which I am sitting, the room in which all the audience must be sitting individually wherever they are sitting, most likely is some kind of a cube or a cuboid.
Right.
And any cube or cuboid is made possible by, if you think about it, by 12 folds.
So, were you always so fascinated by origami and by architecture, or did something special, some particular event spark the interest in it?
No, I wasn't. I in fact came to it very late in my sentient life. So I very happily finished my architecture graduation, and at that time also I did not have much of an inkling. And like most people, I thought that origami must mean those little craft things that we make as kids.
Right. Right.
Paper boats and aeroplanes, and of course flapping birds and other things. So
Mm-hmm.
it was around the time I was doing my masters that my eyes kind of opened to this. And for masters, one of the subjects that we could do was landscape architecture.
Okay.
So that was one of the things I did want to do. I always had a very keen interest in uh, understanding how the plant kingdom actually works.
Right.
And I found folding through my fascination and love of the plant kingdom. So
Okay.
this almost is I don't know. I mean, it is must be. I mean, it is serendipity, and I've told this story so many times, but maybe it bears telling one more time. So I was going to come back from London uh, to a practice where I knew that I was going to do landscape projects,
Right.
and so I had not gone to London to do a landscape masters, but I knew that I was going to practice landscape, so I had to self learn. And London, in that sense, is an old established place in terms of love of all things horticulture. They have the Royal Horticultural Society. They
Right.
have a lot of these parks. Kew Gardens is there. Um, so I would visit a lot of these places just to see what was happening, in the landscape field. What were the latest things? How
Mm-hmm.
were landscape architects kind of creating new expressions in landscape and things like that. I was just looking at this particular tree, which is a beech tree, young beech tree, and the leaves have this very fascinating kind of fold, a very basic kind of pleating fold now, which we do so much in our paper folding, but the leaf had that pattern. So I was looking at it, and I came to kind of realize that hey, there are these fold patterns around us in Mother Nature. And this gardener walked up to me, tapped me on the shoulder from behind, and asked me, what are you looking at? And he had a slightly, I think, I don't know, but slightly Welsh accent, I think. And so I said, I'm just looking at this leaf. It's got these folds in it. So he asked me, do you know why it has the folds? So I said, well, no, I don't know. So he said that the leaf saves energy by this. The tree saves a lot of energy by having these folds. I thought, what rubbish is this man talking? And I went on and saw the gardens, and then I came back, and then of course, incidentally, we got a project to do an airport roof, and I thought that I'll pick up folding technique to kind of do a roof form for the airport. It was a theoretical project for the college. And while I was studying the folding, I came across this research by this duo, Kobayashi and Kressling, where they had in detail explained how beech trees save up to 30-40% energy by having folds in their leaves. So, I mean, long story short, uh, plants use the technique of folding to unfold full formed leaves, especially in cold climate countries like the UK. In India, we usually don't see these unless you like travel in the Himalayas or colder regions. In the warmer climates, there's a lot of sunlight, so the leaf can actually start very small and grow because there's so much sunlight. It can grow. It needs that energy to grow. But in
Right.
the cold climate, that energy is not there. So basically, the a leaf is fully formed at the get go. It just packs in as like a umbrella. I can say it's a good example. It packs in like an
Right.
umbrella in a leaf bud, and then at the right time when it's spring and the roots start pumping sap into the network, it's hydraulic action. All the veins are along the fold lines. So essentially, the sap tightens the leaf out and it becomes like a fully unfurled umbrella. And just by
Right.
doing this, you are not asking the leaf to grow from a baby leaf to an adult leaf, but you are forming the leaf in the beginning and just packing it and then unfurling it at the right time. The cold climate tree, which is lacking sunlight for most time of the year, is able to save that energy. So
Right.
this was a very, very important realization for me that Mother Nature is extremely scientific in the way she does things.
Right.
There's logic behind every little aesthetic decision, and the folds are not there on the leaf just for the heck of it.
Right. And so, like, you studied professionally as an architect and you're now
Yes.
practicing as an architect. So, through, like, after this realization, you must have started. So, how did you go about it? How did you build on your journey?
So NID had a fairly significant role in this when I came back, and I was looking for projects where I could implement, the idea of folding. There were no projects, literally, because nobody had thought about it seriously that folding can be something fundamental to design practice. And B, otherwise folding is used, like a lot of architects have used folding without calling it folding, or all that. Even designers use, like packaging designers, they are using folding all the time to do their structural packaging designs and things like that. But nobody
Right.
really coalesces all that body of knowledge and says that I am a folding designer or something like that. So I was trying to kind of coalesce all that together and say that in whatever discipline of design, if you have something which requires folding, then come to me, sort of thing.
Right.
So there was no work and everybody thought that I was cuckoo. So at that time, my mentor and NID alumna Amit Gulati, he suggested that I go and do a workshop at NID. At that time, Aditi Ranjan was heading the textile department. I think this was 2009 or 10, I think. So Aditi called me, I spoke to her, and she said, what do you do? So I said, I'm an architect, but I fold paper. So she said, you come. So I said, but I don't know anything about textiles. So what do I do there? Because your textile students will obviously know much more about textiles than I will. So she said, you come with your folding techniques, you show, what you can do with the paper folds and all that. And rest we'll see what the students will do with the technique. So I went. I was also, what age was I at that time? I was 26, 27.
Okay.
So I went. So it was a 3-week departmental elective. So
Right.
that really had a transformational effect on me because as an architect, you are never really taught about textiles. There are a lot of hard materials that we do work with, concrete and wood and brick and all that. But textiles is not something that usually architects do work with unless you are working with, tenseglities or stretched textile materials and things like that, which also some architectural application or space making or something, but nobody really goes into the nitty gritty of garment construction, or I mean an architect is not taught about these things. So that was eye opener for me, and then also it started a chain of these annual open electives that I would keep going back to every year at NID.
Right.
I kept going back till about 2017.
Okay.
And in that time, in these 7, 8 years, I must have taught all the disciplines the origami technique, from furniture to lifestyle accessory design to new media students to you name it, whatever departments were there, toy design, all of them at some point or the other have been a part of the origami workshops. And
Right.
the fantastic thing was that I learned as much from these students as they did from me, because all of them were specialized in their areas. So a toy designer knows a lot about different materials, the idea of play, how to put the materials together to create that joy of play. And the LAD students have exposure to so many different kinds of metals and hybrid materials, and new media students are working with digital areas and um, hybrid augmented reality perspectives and things like that, and all of that came into folding, and folding went into them. And
Right.
बहुत अच्छी तरह से मेरे दिमाग में भी खिचड़ी पक गई, उनके दिमाग में भी खिचड़ी पक गई, and I came away from the process much richer. Of course, with every year we would kind of also I would try to take new techniques, new things that I was continuing to research, and that I think held me in very good stead, because it grounded me that I did not have to build architecture right away. I could
Right.
start with a piece of furniture. I could start with a small product. I could start with a small work of art which had folding in it, and that was good enough. I could create a small product design thing. And because architects are trained कि यार तुम तो buildings बनाते हो, you are architects, you should design buildings and you should design spaces. So when architects graduate, when immediately if they are not working on spatial projects or architectural projects, they tend to get a little demoralized. But since I got this wide spectrum of disciplines and areas in which I could try my hand at with the folding technique, it opened up new horizons. And at the same time, I started researching how to fold different materials. That
Yeah.
was
Because
the most important takeaway from this entire experience. That earlier I was adept adept or a keen learner and explorer of the folding technique, and I was always folding paper. But once I had done all these series of workshops, and then of course once I'd done a few workshops, then I started getting calls from abroad and from the IITs and the NIFTs and the other schools of architecture in the country and other places. So every time I would try to take like a new folding technique uh, with me. So I would fold something in paper, and then I would take it to a school of architecture and say, shall we try folding this in galvanized iron sheets, or
right.
shall we fold leather? So one time we went, I think there was a workshop at the Footwear Design Institute, this is in Gwalior, I think. So they make shoes and they make leather bags and they make lots of things with leather. So they said our material is leather. So I said leather is very floppy and doesn't, will it hold the folds and all. So he said, okay, let's try. So lots of leather materials we tried, lots of different techniques, how to hold the folds and stuff like that. Then we discovered suddenly this lovely material called tabla leather. The parchment leather that goes on top of tablas.
On the top of the tabla, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it's goat skin, and goat skin has stayed with me now till now. So I do a lot of large spatial installations, lights, other forms with goat skin, and I've also had people from NID who were at the workshop, um, at these various open elective workshops, who also have fallen in love with the folding technique. So they now have their own practices which are around folding. Aditi Anuj is one of such people. She has a lovely practice around folding. She does a lot of research of her own. She's also interested in how materials are made, also the ecological side of things. So she's trying to look at paper alternatives which would be, you know, robust and good paper to fold, also structurally strong.
Right.
And that journey into, you know, the material understanding has been the most rewarding part of this process. From, you know, directly foldable materials like sheet metals, like copper. If you get a sheet of copper, you can fold it.
Yeah.
To sheet of brass, you can fold it. But what about cast brass? So brass, when it is in its liquid form, you can also fold it, right? How would you fold it? So basically, if you have a paper model or you have a hard model, cardboard or something, you can do like a mold making, do black sand mold casting or something. And then from the mold, you pour the liquid into it. So anything which is liquid is also foldable, but as a derived process. So what all can come in that? Everything. Chocolate, you can liquefy chocolate and you can make a mold from it and you can cast it. Concrete, slip casting, ceramics can be cast into folded forms. And it's only not aesthetic. I've realized that even these liquid materials, when you apply the fold technique to them and you make it in that and it hardens, you are able to get a much thinner cross section of the material.
Right.
And that means that you've saved material. So if originally you made a bowl and it had a certain amount of clay in it, because in the slip casting method, suppose I put folds in the design of the bowl and then I do the slip casting, I'm able to get a bowl which is much thinner in cross section. So overall, the strength of the fold technique comes through even in the materials which are not directly foldable. So that Mother Nature's idea of do more with less comes through, because once the fold is frozen, it's strong, right? The material is strong and it's stronger than when the design didn't have fold. So something, I can make a concrete wall, and if a typical concrete wall is 150 millimeters thick, if I put folds, then I can achieve the same wall in 75 mm thickness. So it's also a change in the way you see the wall, because you can see the folds and all that. But additionally, it's also a stronger wall with less material. What could be cooler than that, right?
Yeah. Speaking of this, so a lot of your work, and it's massive in size. They're massive installations. So are all of them somewhat folded? I mean, either through a method or a casting method, or is it like individual pieces coming together to create such a massive structure? I mean, I can't wrap my head around it.
So the folding length or breadth or width is only limited by the size of the raw material which is available. And many of the larger installations are, of course, in softer materials, hybrids of fabric and plastic and paper, different kinds of paper. There's a fabulous paper which is not paper actually, called DuPont Tyvek, which is a material made by this DuPont American company. DuPont made this to make envelopes which would not get wet, which would not get dirty, which would be washable, and which if you crumpled it, then the paper would come back. So they started making envelopes for the US Army and the forces using this Tyvek material. We have been evolving a lot of materials of our own, treatments also on the materials which protect them from dust and protect them from humidity and fungus and things like that. Things which make them structurally stronger. We make these hybrid sandwich materials ourselves in-house, where we take 3 materials and we make a sandwich, because we need the strength from one material, we need the texture from one material, and we need, the protection or the sealing quality of a certain material. So for installation to installation, we make those hybrid materials. So it's always fun because the discussion starts with, you need a certain aesthetic geometrically, and then you need a certain size of installation.
Yeah, right.
So when you start thinking about those things, then of course your, the designerly thinking around material and material strength and all of that comes into play. And it's always challenging. It's always good fun. There's a part which people who see the final installation, they don't see the fact that we've innovated a material, or the fact that we've researched a lot about materials and then come up with some fascinating new solution. It's fine because it's us. Doctors enjoy when they open up a patient and they discover some, and the patient is just happy ki main to jinda bach gaya.
Right.
But for us, these behind the scenes discoveries and all that are as fun or more fun sometimes than the final aesthetic output, which of course is also nice, and it's joyful and all of that. It puts the smile on the client and the people who see it and all of it, but they don't know half the story. So that's our joy, and also our trade secret. We can't tell.
Right, of course. It's very fascinating how, everything that you do, you kind of unravel something new about it as you go on.
Yes.
I mean, as we were talking about, materials and self-made materials, and I had read about one of your projects, about the 100 materials thing that you've been doing. So I actually came across that, and my first thing that popped into my head was not the possibilities of what all we can fold. It was, is there anything that cannot be folded? So, like in the 100 materials that you've been trying to fold, have you encountered any material that you've struggled with, or it's extremely difficult to figure out a way to fold it, or something like that?
Currently we are struggling a little bit with stone, because we are trying to
Stone.
fold stone.
Wow.
So a
Okay.
traditional way of looking at folding stone is how stone is folded in, say, in a lot of our uh, ancient temples all around the country. One of the first art projects which were like purely in the realm of art, which I had done, was a tribute to one stone temple in Karnataka, Chennakeshava Temple in Belur. And there, obviously some anonymous artist, but he had folded, I mean, he had carved the stone and he had created that column. And I saw it, I was like, hey, this looks like a Japanese origami artist's work. Literally, I mean, if I didn't know that the building is standing actually on stone columns, I would have thought that column is made out of, like a folding technique. Obviously, he did carving, so he carved out the stone, but it really looked like, folded material. So at that time, we had made one metal column, which kind of was a art studio's tribute to that anonymous artist who had made that column. But then I kept thinking about stone, and I always wanted to go back to working with stone. And finally, this year, we've kind of trying to wrap our heads around it. Of course, the conventional way of folding stone would be to carve it, which is that you get the folding pattern into the stone. It also means you're wasting a lot of stone by, getting that stone as a material is already strong, right? It doesn't need to get the folding pattern to become stronger. So in that sense, I mean, from a philosophical, ethical standpoint, it's a total waste of time trying to fold it just for the heck of it. But then if you look at some alternative interesting ideas, for instance, now there are these agglomerate stone materials where, in a lot of these stone quarries, when you get the stone out and you mill it and you clean it down to like a regular slab thickness, there is a lot of waste stone which basically falls like powder or like chura. So what they are now doing is that they are not letting that stone powder get wasted, but they are mixing it with agglomerates, with resins, with things, and making the stone, which is called agglomerated stone. So now, as soon as one gets this idea that you can make stone from its powdered state, so again, derived process, right? So then now I can carve stone. So all that I need to do is cook up a batch of liquid stone first with powder and resin and all of that, and then make my mold, which can be in steel or something. And then I pour the liquid stone, and then it, of course, solidifies. And there you have it. You have folded stone. And then that folded stone was totally wasted powder stone, which is useful for nothing,
Right.
as compared to a regular slab of agglomerated stone, which would have been made to look like the actual stone, which is slab cut like that. If I make the folded stone, I can make it thinner and it would have the same amount of strength as the agglomerated stone. Now, I can't put that on the floor because floor has to be flat and we need to work on flat things. But a lot of applications for sculptures, for wall claddings, for external facades of buildings, endless possibilities. So this year we are trying to see and get our hands a little bit more deeper into stone folding. Let's see where it goes.
Right. I think another question that I've had in my mind is that all these designs that we see of folding in your sculptures, are they original self-created designs, or do they all follow some fundamental principle? Like for drawing we have perspective. It's a fundamental principle. So does folding have some kind of a fundamental, or do you explore and create your own designs?
Both, actually, little bit of both. Initially, when I started out, of course, I was standing on the shoulders of giants. There have been lots of people who have been working with patterns and creasing and techniques over, I should say, 1,000 years or more, because the earliest patterns that one is able to get their hands on date back to when paper was invented, which is very long ago in China. And when paper was invented, paper folding was also invented. So you would have, I mean, how do you wrap something in paper? You fold it, right? You put it in on the piece of paper and you fold the paper on top of it. So as soon as there is paper, you need to fold it. And then as it went to Japan, then they made it into a fine art. So you would have these paper umbrellas and paper fans and things like that. But coming back to your question, in the last 30, 40 years, actually, since the 60s and 70s, when computation power has also increased a lot, there have been immense strides in understanding these patterns, what they can do, what they cannot do, because every flat creasing pattern renders something which is three-dimensional. Uh, so you can test the three-dimensional pattern to see, is it flat packable, is it not flat packable? If it is not flat packable, why is it not? So I would have a kit of say 10 or 12 fundamental patterns, which are universal patterns, which don't necessarily now belong to anyone. They are traditional patterns in that sense. And then artists all over the world take those patterns and they make their own. And then once you've started making variations, then your brain starts opening up new patterns, which you can then kind of create of your own. But some of the installations have generic, simple, traditional fold patterns. For instance, there are the family of patterns which are called Mura-Ori patterns, attributed to this mathematician Mura, Koryo Mura. And the whole world of origami artists, they use Mura, they modify Mura, they add lines, they change the angles, and then they make a Mura variation. So similarly, there's another family of rhombus or diamond shaped patterns which are called Yoshimura patterns. So that itself is a very large family of patterns also, in which then you can again build your own variations. And then we are going into hybrid territory. So if you combine Mura with Yoshimura, what do you get? So I've just given two examples, and then you start combining them. So like this, there are, there was a computer scientist, an engineer, brilliant mind by the name of Ron Resch. And Ron Resch came up with this family of patterns which are attributed to him. They are called Ron Resch patterns. And a lot of origamists start by using the Ron Resch pattern. Then they build work on top of it. So they create their own variations. So there's a particular pattern which, Ron Resch pattern, which starts with an equilateral triangle. And now we've done one variation of it, which is with an isosceles triangle, like we changed the equilateral to an isosceles triangle. And we've done another variation where we've distorted the triangle so that it looks like the Mercedes-Benz logo. So if you dent the star in, you get that. So that way, the world of origami patterns is very open, very sharing. A lot of people share their patterns. A lot of people don't necessarily put a commercial value on the pattern also. I've also created patterns and released them out. There was a project that we did with the Asian Heritage Foundation, Rajiv Sethi, and we were doing a skilling of these shadow puppetry artisans from Andhra. So they traditionally depict Ramayana and Mahabharata and a lot of their tribal motifs and things on their puppet forms. And nobody is now buying the puppets. So what do you do with that skill? So Rajiv Sethi was doing a program in which he was inviting designers to and pairing them up with these, craft clusters. So we did a 2-year-long project with his organization where we trained these artisans to fold their parchment leather and make lamps from them. And then on the lamps, they were again drawing their, Ramayana and Mahabharata and all that. So at the end of the 2 years, I donated about 18 patterns to them, saying that in perpetuity, you can keep using these patterns to create your own like your lampshades and then selling them. They were also finding an export market for the lamps. So it was good because it was that a contemporary aesthetic of folding had come with the the traditional idea of the hand painting on the leather, and that made for fantastic collaboration. And the fact that I would be able to share the patterns with them and say कि मुझे royalty चाहिए या ऐसा कुछ, not have to say something like that, is a beautiful abiding feature in the origami community, that we freely, openly share our patterns. There are of course people who don't share their patterns or something, and they also have a valid reason not to. Like they would like to kind of do some creative stuff with the pattern and maybe let it get a little old before they kind of share it openly and saying ki acha, now let people do whatever they want to do with it, because I have kind of explored it to its logical conclusion. And I would say that it's still quite an open community, and it's like mathematicians, you come up with a new formula, you're like, मैं तो नहीं बताऊंगा किसी को, मतलब ऐसे नहीं होता. So in fact the mathematicians usually they share so that then the other people can also look at it and ratify it and say that अच्छा इसमें तेरे गलती हुई है. I've got patterns made where I've shared it with people and they've looked at it and said that maybe if you tweak this a little better, like do this or make some changes, then the pattern gets better, and it's better from the discussion and the sharing. So I always feel that when people ask me also, can you share the pattern and all, I say yeah, I can share the pattern with you. If it's an invention of mine or a significant variation of mine, then I only request that you don't use it for commercial purposes. But if you're using it for learning or disseminating or, understanding, I mean, go ahead, there's no problem. And for the generic patterns which are available everywhere, I mean, everybody's anyways using them.
Right. A very hypothetical one. If you could go back to when you were a college student and tell your younger self something as an aspiring architect, as an aspiring designer, what would that be?
I think I'd like to go back to school, not college. And yeah. And, I used to find maths a very dry and boring subject. And it was always taught also in, not the most exciting of ways. And when I discovered origami, I thought that, hey, this is a fabulous way to actually, disseminate and teach mathematics. So I don't think I would say anything to my younger self, but I'd probably go back and say a few things to my maths teachers to say, yeah, these resources are available, and why not make the subject, it's such a horrifying subject for so many of us, don't you think? I mean,
right.
So many students are mortally in fear of maths, and they don't enjoy it, and they don't know why they are being taught algebra and quadratic equations and stuff like that. But all of that has parallels and visual equivalents in origami, and I know them now, and I see them now, and I can visually represent all those differential equations and things with beautiful examples from nature and from the work that I do. And if we were shown practically that the world around us, the human body is repository of all of this mathematics, then all of us would be in love with mathematics. We would be, I mean, the universe is mathematics, and you speak to someone, they would say, "Appa pagal hai kya, tu hat ja yahan se,"
No,
and if you say this universe is mathematics to anyone, they'll be like, other than the, the buying and selling and the, the finance world and money matters, and of course some things where dimensions are important, where is the mathematics? But it's all around us, it's hidden away from plain sight. So as you are speaking to me right now, I mean, the speech that we are conducting, this is mathematics, and that I'm nodding my head, you are nodding your head, this is mathematics. It can be explained.
Language.
Yeah, it is. And we would be good friends with everybody if we spoke in this language and we understood this language. We'd also have a much better relationship with Mother Nature if we understood and talked through this. So I think I don't have any advice for my younger self. In that sense,
way of looking at
I might have some advice, and now I'm trying to make amends. I'm speaking to this Federation of Mathematics Teachers in the country, also trying to engage a little bit with the new education policy, this NEP that has come. In the NEP there is this thing that art in maths and stuff like that. So I'm trying to see if a little bit of this can come into our school curriculum, because that's where a much deeper engagement with 360-degree way of thinking can happen.
Right.
You have this silo way of teaching subjects. Now you go to school, you have maths class, then you have science class, then you have art class. Have you ever heard the art teacher in a school talk about mathematics? I have never heard.
I see NID professors talking about it all the time, but school teachers rarely.
So, so when you walk into an institution like NID, where there is a 360-degree way of looking at things and talking about stuff and the fact that all things are connected, then you have this aha moment. But imagine if all the kids in school had this aha moment,
Right.
Where would we be as a country if a biologist had appreciation for mathematics and economist had appreciation for art and understood it and knew it in a way where he knew it was meaningful and not just कि हाँ ये भी बहुत अच्छा है, but knew it as something which was connected. So that I think is something which is sort of like in my own small way, I mean, it is my life's mission to get this kind of thinking into the way whenever I go for workshops, there is a part skilling and a part of it is spent in trying to do this brainwashing, where I am trying to tell the students that, stop thinking in like a silo way and start thinking where things are connected to each other and, come out richer from that experience. And also be curious all the time, because things are happening all around us. So in fact, I'm in a workshop right now in Lucknow, and the architecture students from all over the city. And we were given a space today, and it's a sort of outdoor space, and they made a shamiana on top. And both sides had these yellow billowing curtains. So I looked at the curtains and I asked one of the students, what do you see when you see these curtains which are kind of billowing in the wind? So he said they are yellow in color, they have some pleats on them, there seems to be some pattern. So I said, okay, that's good. Then, they're moving a certain way because of the wind, because they're anchored below. The pleats are also opening and closing in a certain way. The sunlight is casting some kind of shadow through the curtain onto the ground. So just by looking at a moving curtain, there are 5-6 disciplines which are coming. There's physics, there's maths, there's art, there's movement of the, the curtain itself, the materiality of the curtain itself coming into play, the construction of the curtain, how was it made. So I said, this is the way that we should look at things. When you look at something, you should start seeing the layers of things that are in it, and not just what you see at a glance and then you're like, okay, what is this? This is a book. That's it. So that I think is important. I feel that uh, if by the time I die, there is a change, institutional change in the way we are taught and in the way that we think.
Right.
I mean, as a nation, as a people, as people inhabiting this world, we would be in a far more maturer place uh, if this were to happen. I mean, it's my pipe dream.
And I was one who used to heavily fear mathematics, and I was one who couldn't look at things beyond, beyond what appears to be on the surface. But just a few months here with, this community, it's changed the perception altogether, and it's nice. It's nice to have that once in a while. So I've opened up the chat box for all the viewers who are here, who are listening to us conversing. And if you guys have any questions, you can drop them in the comments. And beyond that, there are a few that I've received. So one of them was, if, someone is completely new to origami and, the art of folding, where would you suggest that that person start?
So there's an absolutely fabulous book, which is a good starting primer by this gentleman called Paul Jackson, and the book is called Complete Pleats. So it shines very complete pleats. So it shines very good light on some of the fundamental patterns, and he's made the book almost like a catalog. So you can almost literally like see the progression of the simplest patterns, which is like a fan pattern, like an accordion, mountain valley, like that, to more complicated patterns. Among them, of course, the Miura-Ori family, the Yoshimuras, and plethora of drawn resh patterns and things like that. And all of them are there. Of course, I mean, for people who want to engage more with advanced techniques, you'd have to look at individual people's works and their their publications. But this for a starting person, this is very good. Actually, he had an earlier book which was called Folding Techniques for Designers, also by Paul Jackson. But then he expanded that book, and he has included a lot of new material. So this Complete Pleats is the new book that one should get one's hands on if one is looking to kind of seriously engage with becoming a learner of this technique.
Right. Complete Pleats. Good place to start. Okay.
Yes.
Another one is that you must have had a role model, right? Like when you dove into this, somebody who taught you, somebody who guided you, somebody who you looked up to. Was there a person like that, or an artist?
So in different times of my journey, there have been different people at that time who've been inspirational. For instance, when in my first job, I was at Incubus Consultants, and my boss and mentor was Amit Krishna Gulati and Rohit Gulati, two brothers, and they were both very inspirational to me because they had a very fresh perspective. They're both very hardworking, also always emphasizing learning, and they were also very, very good and wonderful mentors to me, and they still continue to be. And when I was in college, we had one particular faculty who was I thought he was like at that time. Of course, there was no Wikipedia at that time, but I thought he was like, if today I refer to him, I call him like the Wikipedia of architecture. And he was Professor Sambodh Sen, and he also had amazing impact on the way I thought and discussed, what architecture meant for me and what I wanted to do in architecture. He instilled in us this love of research, of seeing as much of stuff that has been done already, reading up about it, poring over work that has been done before, analyzing it from different aspects, and so on and so forth. And there have been so many people, actually. It's tough. And then amongst famous people who I really look up to, there is Ruth Asawa, who's an artist. She was a Japanese immigrant in US, and from scratch she built a career around origami. She used to make sculptures with metal wire and cast mild steel and things like that. And from facing all the trauma of displacement, of being an immigrant when the World War II was happening, how Japan and US were at each other's throat. So she was an immigrant in the US at that time. Just imagine, what she would have gone through, how the US government treated her. And through all of this, she never gave up her art, and she persisted, and she kept making more and more cerebral works, which were, beautiful and eye-opening. Among the contemporary brand of origami artists, I really enjoy looking at the work of Polly Verity. She's also a brilliant artist, very, very innovative. I love looking at the ceramic and stone sculptures of Halima Kassel. She's Asian origin, but now lives in the UK. I love reading the correspondence of Albert Einstein, the letters that he wrote to people over the years. And it's very, very inspirational to read his thoughts on things other than, of course, his physics. And Tagore is a huge influence. I come from a Bengali family, so he was there right from childhood. I trained in his music, but I also started enjoying and reading serious philosophical work by him, and he has been a huge influence. I think I also find the notes and written words of the Adi Shankara very, very inspiring. Of course, in his words, some, and then of course annotated and written by a lot of other people over the years. He walked across the length and breadth of India. Can you imagine the ancient times? And at that time, it's not as if we had the Golden Quadrilateral project, right? So he was walking on some tarred road or something, right? He would have been going through enemy territories and infested jungles and all of that. And then he set up these mutts all over the country. And I mean, fabulous. And of course, all these travelers over the years, also I feel very, very inspired by, who undertook journeys from other countries, came to our country, Fahian, Huensang, uh,
Hmm.
Ibn Battuta. Really, some. I mean, I would say that even the people who got colonialism to our shores, the Vasco da Gama sorts, they were in that sense, curious people.
Right.
They wanted to see where was India. You know, Columbus also started out trying to reach India only. It's another thing that he reached America, but
Right.
uh, all these people are also very inspirational because at that time you didn't know what it was, all exotic, right? And they were like, kya hai pata nahi, but let's go. Where you know that you might lose your life also, because it, I mean, a journey from even as late as the 18th 19th century is a ship journey before the Suez Canal opened from Europe to India via the Cape of Good Hope,
Hmm.
which was not the Cape of Good Hope. It was actually the Cape which destroyed ships. उन्होंने ऐसे ही oxymoronic नाम रख दिया, Cape of Good Hope, so that people don't get scared shit. Cape of sinking ships. Actually, it was. It used to take 6 months for a ship to, travel from, say, a port like Lisbon in Portugal and reach anywhere on the western coast of India. 6 months you are in a rat infested and boat with all manner of drunk people, eating whatever you can, getting seasick, just so that you can come to this place called India and see what it's all about. So our appetites, I mean, the 21st century, us people, we are armchair, we are nonsense. I mean, those were the people.
You're fond of traveling?
I admire the spirit of curiosity.
Right.
The fact that there's a unknown and you go and David Livingstone going into the African forest, people just traveling so that they can put a, like, these, there were these people who made the maps for us, right?
Right.
The maps which now accurately map the whole world. Before we had satellites going into space and accurately mapping the planet, there were people who were cartographers, and there was this Bengali guy, I forget his name, who actually helped figure out the height of the Mount Everest.
Okay.
The credit went to the Brits, but it was actually this guy. And he went to 4 or 5 locations along the Himalayan edges, and with the theodolite and his basic machines, he put his mind to it. Then he came back to Bengal and he wrote up this thing and he presented it to the British guy, and he said, the British guy said, I don't know if this is accurate or not, and kind of dismissed him, and then later took all the credit for it, or most of the credit for the work that had been done. Of course, he's given some credit in the description and all that, but you know how it was. I mean, it was a colonial country, so Indians were not supposed to be smart. So there are lots of people like that. These people are inspirational to me. The fact that you step out of your comfort zone and you do something which challenges you, which not necessarily you are going to make money out of, or you're not trying to make a career out of it, but you just do it because your brain is so fertile that if you were not going around and discovering things every single day, then it would explode. Like if you did the same bloody shit every day, then on the 5th day you are like, my brain is rusting and going to fall off very soon.
Right.
So if you didn't, I mean, if I've not learned a new fact in a given day, or discovered a new word in the English language, or understood a new factoid, or learned some new thing about history, or something about my country, or something about the cosmos, the whole day is wasted, right? Subah se matlab, what did you do? Get up, brush your teeth, do your shit, khana pina khao, and roam around, come back, have your dinner, and that's it. Where's the growth? So that growth only comes when we have that mindset. And as human beings, we have the potential to grow tremendously. I mean, we are blessed with intellectual capacities which no other animal on this planet has been blessed with.
True.
You know? Yet, what do we do with it? I mean, most of the. Have you seen that new Pushpa dance that most people are doing? That meme where people are dragging their feet. When I see things like that, I'm like, what are people doing? You know?
Right.
Like all these memes that people create. Like, I mean, what is the intelligence being harnessed for? Anyways, yeah, I mean, I start to go on these little rants.
Absolutely understandable. I mean, right there with you. Totally relate. But
Totally digressed from the topic at hand. So sorry.
that's completely fine, because everybody at NID keeps telling us to question, to be curious, to discover, to research, and initially it feels like, okay, they're nagging, but when you actually get into it, you understand that everything that you look into can unlock multiple possibilities. And I think that is what Baatein somewhat tries to do. Bring in people who can share their experiences, unlock something new every week for everyone to see and understand. I mean, folding stone. Still, I'm stuck there. To be able to fold stone, unbelievable. But
I want to collaborate with a chef and write a recipe, not a recipe book, but a discovery book about cuisines where folding techniques are employed. For instance, there are a lot of foods where you need to fold something. A lot of Gujarati food has folding. Like you make the, what is it that you roll something and then you fold it and you. So
right, yeah,
samosas are folded. You pack stuff inside, so you need to make a little casing or a covering for it. So you fold it. The freezing of the form of imarti and jalebi, the way ghevar is cooked, that you just keep pouring the milk on the sides and eventually the water goes out, and then you have this very
exactly.
fine beautiful lattice
Yeah,
honeycomb that forms. What is the honeycomb? The honeycomb is a fundamental process of folding of hexagons and pentagons. It's everywhere around us, from honeybee lattices to uh, the Giant's Causeway in the Ireland, where lava rocks froze in at certain pattern. So Dharini is saying Khandvi. Yes,
yeah,
Khandvi
that's
also.
the role that we talked about.
The roll, yes.
Yeah,
Momos too. Somebody else, Gia is saying momos.
yeah,
So there are a lot of these. I think there's these certain bhajiyas or something which are called Karela fritters or something, but they're actually not. They're like some kind of basin or something, and they're just, the shape is that of a Karela, and I think they're just called Karela fries, or I don't know. But anyways, there's a lot of food stuff around us which is made by folding, and
right.
I want to kind of document this. And if some chef would be interested to kind of uh,
Participate.
co- participate, co-write, because I mean, food is their domain, it would be very nice. So that's also something I want to do. So like this, every month, every week, there's some crazy ideas. Of course, we can't do many things. Art is long and life is short.
Your WhatsApp
But
says that. Yeah, that was another question I had. Why would you say that? I mean, sure, art is
so now
long
you
and
have the answer. You have the answer now.
yeah,
So in a given day, anyways, when I mean, of course, the hustle and bustle of the practice, which has gotten very busy over the last 3-4 years, and when it's not busy, we make it busy because we take up a lot of these projects, self-initiated projects, where we are trying to discover some new things and do some research and waste a lot of the office's resources and money, and my partner's baying for my blood कि और कितना पैसा जलाएगा तू. But it's well worth it, I think, because end of the day, we sometimes a lot of this research stays. It doesn't come in handy immediately, but when we are doing like a pitch for a new project, maybe 3 years later or something, suddenly we say, yeah, we did that bit of research and that was absolutely perfect for this situation right now. And we said, oh, bring it out. And then we look into our archives, and then, we have the Paki Pakai Khichdi from that time. And we can use it then. So nothing goes waste. All the work that we do, I mean, projects where we have pitched, also and not got the projects, they also, inform us in many ways. And I've had projects where we've like done a pitch in 2012, and that has sat in our computers for till 2016-17, and suddenly we got a project where we said that idea is perfect for this, so we bring it back and then we build it. So then we built it in 2017. So the idea didn't go waste. It was well worth it to do it at that time, and then it was available to us as a very precious thing in 2017 when we had to quickly kind of respond to a brief, and we did with that. So that I think is the point of all of this, that nothing is waste, nothing goes waste. Doing all of this is very, very fulfilling, and it all is meaningful. Human life must be made meaningful through our spiritual and intellectual capacities, to reach our full potentials, not only in terms of how much money we earn, but in terms of what we do with all the skills and the resources that the universe has blessed us with.
It's been great to connect with you, hear your thoughts, your experiences, your work. And I think all of us who've been here, we're all taking something or the other away from the entire experience of it, be it related to folding or not. And I'm on behalf of Baatein, I thank you to have joined our session. And maybe someday we could even do a workshop together, get to know a bit more of who Ankon Mitra is and what he does. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I had fun. I love jabbering anyways. So any opportunity to jabber a bit more is always most welcome. And Sid Sketches saying your artwork is amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And pleasure, and all the very best to you and the entire Baatein team as well. Keep doing this. It's something great that you're doing, connecting the community by with these kind of interactions. And my best wishes.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Bye. Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.